Coming up, big-time bracket breakdown. Districts, regions, even a state tournament. Find out which teams are coming in as the favorites.
Last week, we got the lowdown on the WDA. This week, we'll take a closer look at the ESD with a little help from KORN Radio's Steve Morgan.
For the second straight year, the field for the North Dakota State B Girls Tournament was partially set through a random draw. Is that really the best formula? Jandy will answer that and more in this week's Fast Break.
All that plus our picks for some of this week's top postseason matchups. Varsity Sports starts right now.
And how is everybody doing? Alongside Jason Andera, I am Jay Elsen. Welcome inside another edition of Varsity Sports. Jason, the regular season is in the books. It's playoff time.
It is gone. This is the time of the year where only the true champions or champion aspirations survive. And, man, we said it last week. We're going to see an interesting March. We're officially into that March Madness season right now.
Both in terms of where the season is at and on the calendar.
On the calendar.
That makes it exciting, right? All right, well, let's start tonight then with a little bracket breakdown.
Yeah.
Take a look at each individual class and some of the top teams coming into their respective postseason runs. And we'll start with South Dakota, the AA, the top seeds. These obviously now into district finals.
Yeah, the boys tournament took a little bit of a different right turn than we expected it to. I should say left turn, especially in region or District 3A, AA, where Mitchell gets an upset victory on the road. Pierre gets an upset victory on the road. That leaves Huron and Aberdeen playing for their basketball lives coming up in a couple days. That's a huge headliner as far as big games go in districts in AA.
Kind of fits the way the AA boys have gone this season, though. It's felt unpredictable, and obviously with the first round of the playoffs, it's proven to be just that.
Watertown, another team that's going to have to win next round just to keep alive, too.
All right, let's go to the girls' side. Same thing, district finals for them.
Yeah, huge upset when we saw Harrisburg knock off Sioux Falls Lincoln. And, of course, Lincoln has to go to the losers bracket now, and they play against Brandon Valley, another game where a good team is going to have to be sent home. But we saw some of the top teams. We saw Washington do well. We saw O'Gorman do well. The rest of it played out pretty much as we thought.
Region play in Class A, both boys and girls.
Yeah, we're getting to the nitty-gritty. On the girls' side, we saw a couple teams clinch their way into the state tournament. Webster is going back to the state tournament just like we thought. And St. Thomas More, a top seed, is going to go out. The rest of them, as you see here, we've got some excellent region final battles going on. On the boys' side, we've got the top seeds, some of the favorites that you're looking at. Look at Region 2, Clark Willow Lake and Sioux Valley. Another region we're going to see one good team sending on their way home. Same thing with Region 3. Sioux Falls Christian, the top seed here. Del Rapids and Madison have to match up to see who they play. Region 4, Dakota Valley, same thing with Vermilion, Lennox, and T trying to fight their way in. And Region 7, another interesting one. Red Cloud really seems like the favorite here, but watch out for Little Wound, Pine Ridge, and even Winter. They made a run last year. They could pull something off here.
Class B teams are not as far into the process, still in district play, but their districts are a little bit bigger. That's part of the reason for that.
Yeah, they're going to start paring down real quick here. And again, you're looking at some of the top seeds. Some of the top storylines for me on the boys' side, we saw a top 5 team all year long. Sanborn Central, Woonsocket on the boys' side, get beat by 1 point by James Valley Christian. And just a really tough district in District 6 where you see 3 top teams. And this is one of the reasons it'd be nice to see some changing of the seeding going forward, so that'll be fun to watch. And then on the boys' side, on the girls' side, we see Wall already clinch their way in, and they're getting to the point where they're ready to clinch their region finals here too. It's going to be fun, a lot of state bursts, getting ready to punch their ticket to the state tournament here in the next couple days.
The road to state looks a little bit different in North Dakota, in Class A in particular, Jason. You've got the East and the West regions, those about to get fully going here as well.
Exactly. The EDC has already played their way in past the quarterfinals, and in the WDA they get going on Thursday night. But on the east side, we saw pretty much chalk. West side, almost the same thing. West Fargo girls was the only, I suppose, mini upset where they lost in the first round. But of course, you can lose one at this level and still work your way back into the tournament. So not over yet.
All right, well, as we mentioned earlier, State B tournament on the girls' side coming up this weekend. North Star is going to be the number 1 seed in Grand Forks, but they figure to have their hands full in round 1. We'll take a closer look at their matchup with Fairmount, Campbell, Tinta, and the rest of the quarterfinal contest when we come back.
Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Mitchell Technical Institute, Shields, and Farmers Union Insurance Agency.
And welcome back to Varsity Sports. Well, the first of the 10 state tournaments that are going to be taking place between North and South Dakota over the next few weeks. Coming up this weekend in Grand Forks, it's the North Dakota Class B Girls Tournament starting Thursday, runs through Saturday, Jason. And let's take a look at the field here before we get into the individual matchups.
Well, one thing you notice right off the top, no Bishop Bryan. This is the first time we haven't had them in a state tournament in a while, and it's the first time we haven't had a heavy favorite like them in a while. We're in for 4 really good matchups in this one.
So let's start by breaking down this game by game with what looks to be the best of the first round matchups. Top seeded North Star at 23-1 will face Fairmount Campbell Tinta. They come in with a record of 22-1. That's an extremely tough draw for both sides.
Yeah, combined 2 losses for these teams. I mean, some people in the state believe that Fairmount CT is easily maybe a top 3 team, for sure a top 5 team. So you've got a big top 5 battle right off the bat here. North Star used to playing some really tough competition. You look at the top 10 schools in the state, they almost all have a loss to North Star. So the key to this game really is going to come down low. We've got 6'5" Macy Quilvang for North Star. It's 25 points a game, 12 rebounds per game, shooting at a 60% clip. One of the more unstoppable players in this field, going against a team that can handle somebody like Quilvang. You've got a 6'3" Madison Kaler on the low block. So in a Class B girls game, you're going to have a 6'3" going against 6'5". I mean, Quilvang a little more talented all around on the game, so it's still going to be a handful, but they actually have somebody for an answer there. Now, North Star hasn't made it to state since they've co-opted, and this is the first time since 1990 Candu made that team. Macy Quilvang's mom led that team to state that year, so that'll be fun. And then we can't talk about North Star without talking about Stephanie Miller as well. She's also putting up 17.3 points per game, so a dynamite duo on that side of the court. On Fairmount side, you got 4 double-digit scorers. You've got a really fast team that gets up and down, and they haven't lost since the second game of the year to Richland. They are on a roll. They feel like they can play with anybody. This game is going to be an awesome game to watch. I definitely have this one on the radar.
It's one of those that you look at it and you could say, honestly, the winner of this game easily could end up winning the whole thing. If they can get past this test, you figure not much else is going to scare them.
I mean, people say strength of schedule. North Star definitely has the advantage here, and that does come into play here in March.
All right, well, next up, let's look at Watford City against Dickinson Trinity. Trinity edged Killdeer in the region semis, then dominated in the finals. Meanwhile, Watford City breezed through their regional behind Senior Athlete of the Year Katie Mogan and Coach of the Year John Zenz.
Yeah, on paper, this one may be the largest margin of victory that you might expect. But in the regular season, who won the game? It was Dickinson Trinity with a 43-29 win, and that was without their star senior Kennedy Keeter, who had just suffered an ACL injury the game before that. So this Trinity team has some confidence. They've really gelled. Yeah, they've lost a couple games along the way, but they've got a lot of guys that can play, and in the post, this team is very strong. Brianna Soren, Alana Sickler, both getting it done in the low post. But when you talk about Watford City, you talk about the highest scoring team in this field, the highest shooting percentage team in this field. They rotate 9 players, so they're not going to have to worry too much about foul trouble. And their losses really came early on. One to Trinity, and then they lost to Turtle Mountain, a ranked team in Class A. So a lot of people feel like this Watford City team is the best of the bunch.
And you said Coach Zenz, in your conversation with him, pointed to that game as maybe the turning point of their season, even though it did come early.
Yeah, he said we did not play well, and our continuity and our flow has gotten so much better since then, so they expect to play much better than they played Trinity the first time.
Park River FL against Carrington. These teams, Jason, have the most losses combined of any matchup, but neither certainly short on quality here. These are good teams. What do you expect to see here?
Yeah, you see 2 losses on one side. You see 5 losses on the other side. Carrington has 3 of those losses in overtime. One of those losses coming to North Star. So forgive the record. This is definitely a team to watch. Carrie Hohalter with 10 points a game and Mara Nelson 11 points a game are the leaders in scoring. So they're very balanced. They don't have one girl that they go to for all their scoring. So look for Andy Broughton's team to be able to spread the ball out a little bit. Park River Fordville Lincoln, on the other hand, they love to go down to the post, and that's how they got it done against Thompson. They got a revenge win against them, the only team in the whole season to beat Thompson, and they did it through the low post. They've also got Bailey Beneda, Taylor Knutson, a lot of good backcourt players as well, but look at this team to play some really strong defense.
Finally now, Rugby has only 1 loss this year. That was to North Star. How big of a favorite are they, do you think, against Shiloh Christian?
Well, again, the record looks like Rugby's probably the favorite here. They probably had the easiest schedule of anybody in this field. Shiloh Christian, on the other hand, maybe the hardest schedule of anybody in the field, and they've done it all year without Jay Two Bears, who they were really counting on for some senior leadership. This Shiloh Christian team is a very young team. They've had Krista Ulmer leading them all season long, and I think they've gotten to the point where they feel seasoned. This is the third season in a row they've made it to state, even with Daryl Bearstail leading the crew this year. This is his second stint with the team, and I think he's got this team playing with awesome confidence. Rugby, on the other hand, hasn't made it to state ever as a Class B team. They're led by Shay Heidelbaugh down low, and she'll get some stuff done down low, but are those jitters going to be too big for them to handle? I think this is going to be a very evenly matched game despite the records.
All right, well, the South Dakota State tournaments are right around the corner, and the ESD hopes to figure prominently in the championship conversation once again. Coming up, we're going to talk about some of the league's leading contenders with KORN Radio's Steve Morgan.
Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Mitchell Technical Institute, Shields, and Farmers Union Insurance Agency.
The ESD has been a staple in South Dakota since 1908, and very few people, if anyone, in the state of South Dakota follows it more closely than the guy we're going to turn to right now. Steve Morgan is the sports director at KORN Radio. He's also the host of a program called ESD Weekly. Steve, welcome. Let's start our conversation with the boys. The ESD got off to a great start this year, but the league has lost a little steam of late. Can the teams at the top still put together a strong march?
I don't know, the Sioux Falls schools got off to kind of a slower start. They were good, but just, kind of beat up on one another. But now it seems like the tide has turned. We saw some of our ESD teams get kind of beat up a little bit by the Metro teams there around Sioux Falls. And but I think, when it comes down to it, and we get to March here coming up, that should be looking forward to, some great competition once we get down to the nitty-gritty, I hope.
All right, Steve, let's talk about some of those top teams on the boys' side. Watertown, Huron, Aberdeen, all had strong regular seasons. What do you think of them coming up here in the next month?
Well, coming in, I do a show called ESD Weekly, and so I do the ins and outs. I talk to the coaches and follow every team from top to bottom on both boys and girls. And everybody picked, it was unanimous choice, Aberdeen Central to be the team to beat this year on the boys' side. And all of a sudden, here comes Huron. I think really out of nowhere. We knew Pierre was going to be pretty decent. Watertown, they got good Nate Davis, but what can they do to put together, a good squad for the whole entire, run of 20 games in the regular season? Well, you take a look, and those teams I just mentioned, Watertown, Huron, Aberdeen, have 17, 15, and 15 wins each. So they've done pretty well. Huron, I think, is probably the surprise team. Then Pierre, they're 13-7. And then, Brennan Valley's been very competitive at 8-12. They're a scary team that might be a surprise team that could knock off somebody here in the postseason. But, the boys, really top 4 or 5 have been pretty strong here against a lot of their, opponents on their schedule.
All right, finally, on the girls' side, Aberdeen Central has dominated the league this season. Let's talk about your impressions of the Golden Eagles.
Outstanding. I don't want to say they can turn the switch on when they want to, but I think they can. Not that they toy around with teams, but they're very talented, and really they got about they're starting 5, and then they bring 2 or 3 girls off the bench that can really play too. That I think would be starters on a lot of other teams, maybe in the ESD. So, there they are, the cream of the crop. 19-1, they finished 15-1 in our conference. Okay, 1 loss. What happened? We're still trying to figure that out as well. I think they were just shell-shocked when they played Brandon. Brandon was up and coming at that time. They played with a lot of fire, just talking with both coaches. Aberdeen came, and I think Coach Seiler thought that the team was going to turn it on. They did not, and it was 41-39. I would never have dreamt that Aberdeen would be held to 39 points.
All right, that again, Steve Morgan from KORN Radio in Mitchell. And Jason, things happen this time of year, right? It's unpredictable. We've been talking about it all season long, and that proved to be the case once again on the boys' side in particular.
Yeah, on the boys' side, things got crazy. A couple of the top teams lost. Watertown in the losers bracket, Aberdeen in the losers bracket, Huron in the losers bracket. Pierre did a nice job winning. On the girls' side, Harrisburg pulls out a huge upset. Mm-hmm. Brandon Valley's going to have to fight for their lives now coming out of it. We know Aberdeen Central's in good shape. These ESD teams definitely have some talent. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out over the next week.
But how many times have we seen a team slip up early on in district play and come back and put together a really nice run, and in some cases win the whole thing?
Oh, yeah, it's definitely not over. We could still see an ESD final and maybe even both sides.
All right, well, if defense wins championships, several teams figure to be in pretty good shape in Grand Forks this weekend, but which Class B qualifier in North Dakota is the stingiest? Jason will share his thoughts on that after this.
Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Mitchell Technical Institute, Shields, and Farmers Union Insurance Agency.
Welcome back. Let's run the fast break now,
Let's do it.
shall we? You know the drill. I ask questions. Jandy gives the answers. The trick is he's got to do it without violating the shot
No
clock.
problem today.
35 seconds or under. Let's get to it. We already looked at the field for the North Dakota Class B state tournament, Jason, but I want to talk about how that field was set. This is the second year, as we mentioned, that they used a draw to set up part of the field. What are your thoughts on that process? Do you like it?
It's fun. I mean, they had it on statewide TV. It's built some drama into it, but you don't always come up with the best matchups. A couple bad draws. Fairmount playing against North Star right away. I would have liked to seen that one in the semifinals or even later. But overall, it's fun, so I'm not a fun hater. I liked it.
A lot of really good defensive teams in this Class B field, but consider all of them for a second. Which team would you say is the stingiest?
Yeah, this entire field is pretty much giving up 40 points or less. It's one of the most defensive fields we've seen. Rugby, statistically the best defensive team, but in my mind, Park River, Fordville, Lankin gets it done because they can defend in the post and they got so many athletes on the outside. I think they're the best defensive
It's not
team.
always about the statistics, right? Well, in the boys B, they're moving into region tournaments now. We're always on the lookout for that surprise team that could capture a little extra March Madness, or March Magic, I should say. Who is it?
Well, I think the Bees is always fun to pick because you got so many good teams and you don't hear about all of them. But I think Potter County has got some quality wins on their list this year. And they started out 3-3, haven't lost since then. I think that's a team to watch.
Finally, let's move to South Dakota. Who's the highest ranked team that may not make it to state?
Yeah, this is always the problem. There's going to be a couple of ranked teams left in the clipping room for. One of them might be Canastota. They got to play Chester just to get to the state tournament. That's going to be tough for them. Huron or Aberdeen's not going to make it. And maybe the Lincoln girls, they lost first round. And they got a tough game against Brandon. So yeah, there's going to be some good teams left out.
I think we just ran the fast break in record time.
Yes.
Congratulations, Jason. Well, we've covered the field and previewed the first round of that North Dakota Class B girls tournament. Now it's time to let you know which team or teams we think is going to hoist the hardware on Saturday. Our championship picks coming up next.
Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Mitchell Technical Institute, Shields, and Farmers Union Insurance Agency.
Welcome back to Varsity Sports. Time to wrap things up, Jason. Another round of high school hoops pick'em. It's our first full edition of postseason picks for this year. We've got one little change we're going to tell you about in a little bit, but first let's start with our normal picks. 1 point per game, North Dakota, South Dakota. Yep. We're going to actually start in South Dakota with the boys in the District 3AA region qualifier game. This is not a matchup that most would have predicted going into the night on Tuesday. You've got Aberdeen Central having to go to Huron.
Yeah, we thought this was going to be for a district title. Turns out they're playing for their lives. We heard Steve Morgan say that beginning of the year, everybody was picking Aberdeen Central to win this thing, and Huron was the surprise team. Well, that script has flipped a little bit. I think Huron is the favorite. I think defensively they can shut down the big guy for Aberdeen. I think the Tigers move on.
The last matchup, 43-42, in favor of Huron in Aberdeen, but it was close. It was tight. These teams are pretty even. That being said, I do like Huron. They got both of the games in the regular season. I think they'll get this one as well.
Tough to win 3.
And keep their postseason hopes alive. Let's go to the girls now. March 4th, Region 3B championship game. Castlewood and Sanborn Central Woonsocket. This is a pretty intriguing one here.
This is an interesting one. This is the time of the year that the great players rise up. Sanborn Central has one of those great players. Maya Selland is awesome. She's going to lift this team over a very tough Castlewood team.
Sanborn Central Woonsocket's 4 losses this year, Jason, to teams with a combined record of 66-13. Yep. Meanwhile, Castlewood has 3 losses. 2 of those are to teams below 500. So that being said, all that considered, and other reasons too. I like Sanborn Central Woonsocket as well. Maya-Selin being a large part of that. In North Dakota, March 4th, also EDC semifinals, Devils Lake and Davies. These teams split during the regular season.
Both teams are going to be great next year. They have juniors kind of leading their teams. Jake Paper, though, the junior for Davies, is at a great level right now. I think he's going to overcome what Jake Mertens brings to Devils Lake.
Both teams won on the home floor, and I think that continues. Davies, the home team here. I like Davies to get the win as well. North Dakota girls now, coming up the day before the WDA quarters, Jamestown and Legacy.
Both these teams have the potential to knock off some good teams coming down the road. Both unexpected to get as far as they have this year. I do like Legacy, though. They're really putting a nice team together. They've got the gamut covered as far as defense goes, rebounding. I think Legacy gets a big win.
Legacy did sweep the regular season series. They've got Mercedes Baumgartner's fourth in the WDA in scoring. Britta Phelan, first in field goal percentage, third in rebounds. Those are standout players, enough to push you over the edge in a postseason situation. Now we get to the change. We're going to do a championship pick instead of our upset picks, and here's how it's different. Whatever the seed, and there aren't seeds for everybody in this tournament, of course, they're seeded 1 through 4. So if you pick the 1 seed and you get it right, you get 1 point. If you pick one of the unseeded teams, we're going to give you 5, all right? And we're going to do this all the way through state tournament season, so get ready for this. But who do you like in the North Dakota Class B girls tournament?
I think it's time for North Star to claim their title. They have had a very tough schedule, have beaten a lot of ranked teams, and they've got the best player with Macy Quilvang. They get it done.
You picked the number 1 seed. But that being said, we talked for quite a while about how this tournament is.
Anything could happen.
Could have gone any way, which way. I'm not going to go much further out on the limb, though. The coaches felt like the number 2 seed was Watford City.
They're a good team.
I like Watford City, just one loss in the class all year. I think Watford City's going to take home that title in Grand Forks.
And it could be anybody, but we'll stick with our picks.
All right, stay tuned for that. We're going to recap that whole state tournament coming up next week on Varsity Sports. For Jason Andera, I'm Jay Elsen. Thanks for watching.